Stacked Monday means test after round 10. David King, welcome.
Morning, G. How are you?
I'm good. Like everything's on the table today.
Everything.
Yeah.
Meaning,
Like pressure for a coach to be sacked, an extraordinary blunder that we'd never seen before, cost the team a game, big teams, little teams. Oh, there's great stuff everywhere, I reckon.
it might be the best blunder the Kangas have ever made.
That's cheeky.
It might be.
I've got a cheeky King's gambit to
Have you?
start. The stringer to Durham ball out of the left forward pocket to the top of the goal square.
I know where you're going.
It was Tudor to Gary Ablett all over again, wasn't it?
I still blame Mick for that. We still blame Mick. If you just had stood next to him for one more minute, Mick.
It was a replica play.
I think Mick had kept him to 2 goals for the day. He kicked about 130 goals at you, Gary. Oh, you need to bring that up off the top.
It just looked so similar. I
Save
thought,
that stuff to 5 to 11.
I wonder if this chimes with anybody else of a certain persuasion. What is your King's gambit to get us underway?
Collingwood, the greatest misnomer in footy right now.
Explain.
Well, everyone tells me that they've won 21 of 23 home and away games. They're playing some pretty good footy, but they're this all-conquering offensive juggernaut that just are great to watch and, blah, 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 blah. And what a lot of rubbish. The last 6 weeks, they're the 8th rated attack, 85 points. They're not blowing all the way on the scoreboard like the Brisbane Lions are, who are sneaking under the radar. In terms of punishment, right, so we track your ability to get turnovers onto the scoreboard. So force the turnover, get it onto the scoreboard. And it's done via strike rate, the old cricketing strike rate. Only Hawthorn, Carlton, North Melbourne and West Coast are poorer at getting a turnover onto the scoreboard than Collingwood. Hawthorn, Carlton, North Melbourne, West Coast. They're 14th in the competition at punishing opposition teams once they win the ball back on turnover. That is not what I hear people talk about when I hear them talk about Collingwood. So they're doing it differently. So the numbers, and we track this within an inch of its life, contradict the conventional success indicators. Okay, so they're doing it defensively. This is a greater profile for premiership success than the offensive one in my view. So the last 6 weeks they're conceding only 60 points, which is AFL number 1. The next best are the Dogs, 62. Then there's a gap to Brisbane, 69, Port, 72, Melbourne, 74. So anytime you can get a 20% gap or a 10% gap on the top 4 teams in the comp, you have to acknowledge it. You have to say, wow, that's big. They've become a very good clearance team and a very good score from clearance team. So what's that? So when you're looking towards the end of the season, right, and we're all talking about, they're miles in front. And I've been big on. I am big on them, and I'll still be big on them, but they're doing it a different way. And I think to just say they're great to watch and they're an awesome offensive machine is just wrong. I think the way they play brings an attitude that others aren't at the moment. So I reckon the greatest way to look at team buy-in on the collective, not just 1 or 2 players or individual players or senior players or whatever, it is simply points against. Do you value saving a goal for the team? And I think they do. So there's a lot to like about what they're doing, and there's a lot of question marks about a few others around there. But I think you've got to appreciate what you're seeing, and it is an unbelievable defensive model, not an unbelievable offensive model.
So spin the King's gambit into our big issue, and that's the chasm between Collingwood and Carlton that we saw yesterday.
Yeah. And I don't understand it's hard to work out what's gone wrong from the outside looking in. We only see the end product. So maybe they're making change. Maybe they're spinning things a little bit. Maybe they're trying to play a different game to what they started the season playing, which can happen because you've got to make change every sort of 6 to 8 weeks in footy because things shift. You have injuries. You change your priorities. You try and maintain your philosophy, but you change the model slightly every block of footy. And those that have had success walk you through it at the end of the year. Chris Scott walked us through it at the end of last year. This is what happened at this stage of the year. We had to make change. This is what we learnt, blah, blah, blah. Richmond tipped their whole thing on the head at round 21 year of a premiership year. We thought we were too tall in the forward line. We went with the second ruck being Sean Grigg for 6 weeks. And so things just change. So I sort of hope that's happening at Carlton, that they're making change and it's clunky. So I showed some vision last night. In simple terms, they're leaving too much to one man who's just won the ball to make all the correct decisions, to execute all the skills with great efficiency and have a clarity that at some stage is beyond their years and beyond their levels. So Collingwood win the ball and they have a glut of players around them. There might be 6 versus 3 of the opposition. There might be 5. There might be 3v3. But as soon as they win the ball, they form a line out. It's like catching a wave. There's 10 surfers get on the wave, but no one drops in on the other. They hold their width, and the person who's got the ball knows that if they get into trouble, they can go left or right, and there'll be someone there. And if there's no one there, well, then there's a breakdown, and they'll just dump the ball forward. And that's okay because the team is broken down, not the individual. But at Carlton, the person wins the ball, lifts his eyes, there's pressure on everywhere. You've got no time in AFL footy, and they have to then find the player. The others don't find him, he has to find them. So it's a big shift, and the bottom line is you don't have time to do that in AFL footy at the moment. So I think they've got some problems in terms of how they realign your mates. How do you get your mates to get back to you? Brendan McCartney, who's I think was one of the great assistant coaches at Geelong and didn't get a lot of credit for what he was able to do because it didn't work out at the Dogs, and it was ugly at the end at Melbourne. But he used to teach players to get to the ball, just keep turning up, get to the footy, outnumber, support, and then fan from there. And they did that for years with unbelievable success. Remember, the Geelong started this handball game years ago. And I just think they've got to reset. They should get him in as a specialist coach. They really should. Someone like that just can realign. If they can get that right, they've got the targets. The defenders are underperforming, but they've got them. They're there. But they just need to get the start of their ball movement sorted.
So is that the source of the skill errors that come?
Yeah.
So yesterday was the horns of a dilemma. That the desperation, take the game on, go fast. But when they did, they invariably turned the ball over or couldn't retain it.
Yeah. So you're asking someone to make all these decisions under enormous pressure of game day to know where everyone is when every play's a random play. So Collingwood line out. I know where they are. I can be looking at the grass, picking up the ball, and I know where my friends are. They're going to be there and there when I lift my head. And if they're not, well, that's an event that we've no longer as a team controlled. Carlton lift their head. Where are they? I don't know where they are. I don't know if it's a handball. I don't know if it's a kick. I don't know if it's 10 metres or 30 metres or a surge kick and just try and get it as far as you can. So that's my view. It is such a difficult game to play when you know where your teammates are. If you've got no idea, you have errors, you have poor efficiency, it's clunky, it's never pure. So I think that the start again model has a lag to it. There'll be a 4 to 6 week lag, and that'll be enough, in my opinion, to put a line through the year. Now, others don't hold that view, and that's okay. But until I see it, I mean, how many training hours do you really get during the week? Like meaningful. It's recover and repeat, go again. Recover, repeat and play again. You don't get 6 hours like you do through in pre-season to sort this out. So I think their season's in trouble. It doesn't mean that Vossi can't coach. It doesn't mean that you make a coaching change or you sack all these players. You've just got to reset the system. Does that make sense?
Yes. So they're 11th. There was a 6-week block, wasn't there? And they've gone lost to Brisbane, lost to Bulldogs, lost to Collingwood, and they've got Sydney, Melbourne, and Essendon to come. So it was a formidable block in prospects, and it's proving every bit of that as they give ground from a place in the top 4, sort of sliding. So it always comes back. We're quick to go to the coach, aren't we? Look, okay, this is a system problem, so this is a coaching problem. So these things can happen quickly.
but he knows this part of the game more than anyone. And I've seen him do things. Well, we talked when we saw the first practice match of Michael Voss when he first started last year. You and I sat out at Icon Park and watched it.
St Kilda.
Have a look at this: the forward handball, the lateral handball. They can get that back. So I've got no doubt that Vossi can coach, and not everyone shares that opinion, and that's fine. But there's going to be a time lag.
The big issue was the chasm that's opened up between Collingwood and Carlton from round 23 to round 10 this season. It's been a heavy... The pressure index here is really clear, and that's West Coast. So a little sample of what's happening over in Perth today. The front page of the West Australian reads, "The last straw. Could horror loss in battle for the spoon finally force change at West Coast Eagles?" And it's got 2 wooden spoons, one with the head of the coach, Adam Simpson, and one with the head of the chief executive, Trevor Nisbet. Eagle rock bottom. AFL world erupts after darkest day in West Coast history. Not many coaches survive a loss like this. That's the lift out. And Simo, this is unacceptable. And the website carries a story that has Glenn Jakovich has called for Adam Simpson to be sacked as soon as this week. Adam Simpson there, he was a forlorn figure, as you can imagine, after that. Oh, you did this game, Kingy. At halftime, it was 12 inside 50s, which I thought, that's almost impossible. And in the second half, they kicked 2 points. So I find it hard to engage in this conversation without first acknowledging the injury list. So I think that's easy to skip over.
You can't just acknowledge
But I'll
it.
just give you the raw numbers are there were 2,069 games of experience on the injured list, and there were 1,405 games of experience on the field. So I would suggest to you that's unprecedented. 650 more games on the injury list than were on the field. And of their 10 most experienced players, 7 were injured and 1 got injured during the game. So if we ever had that idea, what would it look like if a waffle team played the lowest ranked AFL team? That was it.
Yeah, I understand that people have lost patience, and I get that. So you come off the back of a premiership campaign, premiership era, you go for it again, you reach with Tim Kelly. But have a look at what those picks that they traded for Tim Kelly become. Like, do the research. The people who are being sensationalist, do the research. They become bit part players at absolute best. Cooper Stevens, Jeremy Sharp. Would you go for Kelly? You'd make that trade again today. So don't use that as a lever. That's not right. I don't know how many people have got the crystal ball out there to say, well, we're going to have injuries to these players again because they've been injured. That really? Is that what we're saying? I can tell you who's going to be injured next year. I don't know. I don't buy into that. Cripps, Darling, Hearn, McGovern, Nick Nat, Ryan, Shuey, Yo. They're pretty handy players. They got none of them. There's 6 players that played on the weekend that are not up to it or not ready. That's a third of your on-field lot are not up to it or not ready. And it stands out, Gerard. I watched that game closer. They're guys that just have simply been elevated to incompetence at the moment. And that all just slowly works its way into a 15 to 20 goal loss. Now, you can sack the coach, no problem. That's a business decision you can make. You can sack the CEO, you can sack everyone. It's easy to sack people. Who's taking that job? Who's walking in and saying, oh, give me this? Or do you stick fat with the guy who wants to be there, who wants to go through the absolute dip, as he's called it, many times, in a calm and clear way, which the club have acknowledged it is going to be a rebuild of sorts, and it probably isn't even at the bottom yet. It's not even there yet. So if you're angry now, stay angry, because it hasn't even hit the bottom, because these young kids are not ready, and you're going to walk a few of those guys out the door, whether they're traded or just moved on and retired, and there are some that are not giving their all. So I take my hat off to Tim Kelly. I reckon he's been a star for them this year. Sheed the same. Jermaine Jones had a fantastic year, and I feel really disappointed for him that he got injured yesterday. Oscar Allen, coming back from injury, giving everything, okay? Not getting great service, not getting great supply, but giving good output. I was critical of Andrew Gaff yesterday because as a near 31-year-old and 270-odd games of footy, you got to give more than that. You got to give more than what you're giving. Okay, so they'll make those decisions easy for the club at the end of the year. Hey, mate, you've had an ordinary year. You're 31. We've tipped over the edge. Thanks. Where do you want to go? But the bottom line is, if you aren't leading, you're leaving. So that's how it is now. So everyone knows that. But sack him if you want. But who are they going to get that's going to go to an absolute bottom-out rebuild? I've said this 100 times. Rebuild coaches don't survive. And you want to walk into this and get on this slide halfway down. Madness.
So you can. This is what I think is really interesting, and the mood in Perth has turned, and unsurprisingly, you can sack and coach as an act of retribution. Like the losses are just too bad, we're sacking you. But can the chief executive, who's presided over all of this for such a long period of time, can he really do that? As if this is all Adam Simpson's fault and it hasn't unfolded with the decisions that they've taken on his watch? I think that's a complicating factor. And the second reason you sack a coach is to get something better, to not waste the rest of a season.
Yeah.
Well, sacking Adam Simpson today won't bring back any of those players next week. So I just don't know how you get a better performance out of this team in the immediate aftermath of it.
But if you think he's underperforming, then no problem. No problem. Sack him. I know, Simone. People say, "Oh, you protect him." I don't protect him. Let's just be real about it, okay? If he thought he wasn't getting the best out of this group, I know the man, right? He would walk into the CEO and say, "Hey, listen, this is no longer working. Thanks." And that may happen at the end of the year. And if you were asking me, what should I do? As 100% hand on heart, I would say, mate, get out of there. What are you doing? Have a year off, reset, refresh. There'll be clubs coming from everywhere. You're a premiership coach. There's not one person says a bad word about Adam Simpson that's been involved in the West Coast Footy Club, be it a player, be it a staff member, a board member, a fan. Argue the logic of why you're making this decision. We're always quick to go for coaches. He was late to change the way they play. But when you've been a premiership coach playing against the trends of the competition, playing that way, why would you jump as quick as what we wanted him to? Outside looking in, judging 18 teams, not one. So I understand people don't want to hear my view on Adam. I get that. But the same people will be saying, "Oh, well, why did we get this guy when we got rid of Simpson and we got this guy? Why have we got this guy?" Well, I'll tell you what, your team is in an awful situation with injuries, and the players you're playing are either not up to it or not ready.
And next year's list, I think, is going to be worse than this year's. They don't have their rebuild list yet. And this is why we spoke about this last week, is bracketing the three lower teams this year. That's not right. His West Coast scenario is wildly different to Hawthorn's scenario that played out before us yesterday. They don't have the rebuild list yesterday, and during the rebuild period, that's when you get these losses. So it's going to get worse. Now, whether they have as many triple-figure losses, I don't know. And there comes a moment where the coach can't sustain this level of losing. That's historically true. But the change that's needed at West Coast probably relies on a level of accountability above Simpson first before you then get to the coaching job.
So give me the next two or three coaching candidates. Gian Syracuse, Hansen.
I think what they will need is a Western Australian figure who's a brilliant teacher who can absorb the 2 to 3 years with the full support of their community. This is what we're trying to do, and it's not a list stacked with older players anymore. We have cut the cord. So I think that's going to be Jamie Graham, who's incredibly well credentialed and has been acknowledged along the way. And I suspect from what we know, he's a great teaching coach. And that's going to be the really hard yards.
Who was considered the great teaching coaches before him? Brendan Bolton?
Yep.
Alan Richardson? It doesn't matter. Until you sit in that seat, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I know what's going to happen. We all know what's going to happen. That there'll be a decision made because of the as a result of losing. In the end, it wears thin. I think it'll come with class. I don't think they'll be sacking him. because I just don't think that's the West Coast Eagles Football Club. If at the end of the season they were to shake hands, I can see that happening quite clearly.
Yep.
Simo saying, hey, listen, come on, let's cut the cord here. But it won't happen just because of the losing at the moment.
It won't happen as an act of retribution.
No, there are reasons.
Because it's not singly accountable to the coach in this instance.
If I didn't think he was a good coach, Gerard, I would say that. But I think he's been a wonderful coach for that footy club. And right now it's, I'd like to know so Glenn Jakovic has come out and said a couple of things. Well, I'd like to know what their vision forward is. It is easy to sack someone. No problem at all. But you want to put Jamie Graham in there and correct in how many years?
Well, someone's going to have to do that job.
It's a long job.
Yeah. And it starts next year, not this year.
Yeah. So perfect world, I would have Simo go at least one more year and get through the absolute bottom of it and have him take the damage because he's been a premiership coach and he's been paid handsomely to do this job. And then once you've hit that absolute ebb, then allow the next guy to bring it out. That would be what I'd be doing.
That's the pressure index. It's going to be a big couple of days for the Eagles to navigate clearly over in Perth, taking the temperature over there. Our debate, it takes a little glimpse into your football following soul. Early in the last quarter, you're going, this is it. We spoke about it on Crunch Time on Saturday. The human uplift that comes with trauma around the coach's position. And North Melbourne got that. And in the last quarter, they looked like they were going to run away with it. They'd set the buffer. And they had any number of opportunities, but they're not quite good enough to convert those. So you have to lay that. And then Sydney peg one back and they peg another one back. And you're starting to think, okay, so how is this going to end badly? In what sort of way is North Melbourne going to get done over in the last minute here by the cruel footy gods? But I could have written down 50 possibilities and not come up with the first ever breach of the hard deck.
Oh, look, in the end, you just have to laugh, really. The performance was outstanding. To do it in the manner they did, I was really critical last week of the co-captain and all those players that underperformed in the effort stakes. Well, I think that Jai Simpkin, I dip my lid to you, the way that he bounced back and led that group, and then he challenges a first gamer to say, hey, go and be yourself. Go and just play, just express yourself, be a competitor. By God, was Wardlaw a competitor for them? He was just terrific. Sheasel gets a different role, forward of centre, but still plenty of opportunity in the midfield. Not saving the game, but creating scores. So there was so much to like. The North Melbourne fans are proud of their club on the weekend.
Yep.
And that is all you ask of your football team. Go and make us proud. Whether you're good enough or not, we don't care. Whether you win or not, we're not going to judge you necessarily on that. But we want to see where we're going. We want to see exactly what you got. Express yourself. It was terrific, Gerard. There was a lot to like about the way it played out. And in terms of the trauma at the end of the game, it's perfect for the AFL. The fact that it was North Melbourne affects nobody. Imagine if it was Port Adelaide and Melbourne on the weekend on Friday night, and it swings the game, and it shifts a top 4 position, or it shifts a finals opportunity for another team. So it was the perfect result to send a shot across the bow for everyone. Hey, this is real. Don't be flippant with any of these sort of things at ground level. But again, I think it shows you when you have major turmoil at a footy club that things can slip through.
Yes.
That's the bottom line. There's so much going on.
Yep.
That you're moving coaches around, you're realigning this, you're realigning that, and all of a sudden something simple goes wrong down. So you go, well, how'd that happen? You go, well, we had this guy doing it last week, but because we've got our coaches having a break, there's reasons, and I don't think it's fair to blame people individually, so we're just going to move on from this one. But I think the North Melbourne supporters are absolutely wrapped with the performance on the weekend. Swans have got a heap of work to do.
Oh, yeah. Early in the last quarter when they were going to get beaten. And you think, how far is this fall? Now, admittedly, they got North on the wrong day, but the fall, which has well been identified, is you can count that as a win if you like, or you can actually analyse what was going on and go, they're not a shadow of the team that they were.
No, they got lucky big time. And, for those that have been all doom and gloom on the Kangas, you're going to be late to the party here. There's enough there. I challenge anyone to go through what some of those people at the footy club have gone through the last couple of years or the last 10, 12 months, from the top of the tree down to handle life and perform. So we've got some decisions to make. I think the club now, given the unveiling of Wardlaw and Sheasel and Ford on the back of the young leaders in Simpkin and the like and Larkey, I think they can make some tough calls. I think it shows you've got to get your environment right. So if there are people down there that aren't towing the line and have been part of the problem, not the solution, and I'm talking about Tarrant Thomas, if you're not helping us get out of this hole, then I think they'll make some tough calls now. Well, I'm not sure they would have said that 6 months ago.
Yep.
You can't be held hostage to talent. Culture is more important. So I think right now this is a great time to draw a line in the sand everywhere. Anything that could go wrong has gone wrong to the point of comedy on the weekend. But you got to keep pushing forward. Work out who's coming with you.
The curiosity in our Monday means test today is Richmond in the close finish. Bizarre.
It was bizarre. It felt like they had the game in reasonable handle there for a large period. Did you not think?
To some degree, they did look like they were going to win.
Yes. It just felt like they were going to get them and then when it started to turn in the third quarter, I thought, they'll go and gap them here. But
with 5 minutes left, Richmond would have to do a lot wrong to lose this, and they did a lot wrong to lose it. So this is self-sabotage, King. That is remarkable stat, which is instantly put forward by Sir Swamp Thing. They haven't won a single one of their past 12 close games.
Amazing. So how does that happen?
I don't know. So I remember you saying in the preseason, I was driving around one morning, and you said the biggest factor in season 2023 will be your capacity to win or lose games in the final 2 minutes.
Yeah. Everyone was doing the 2-minute drills. I've never seen that before. I've never seen 30 minutes, shouldn't say 30, it's an exaggeration. 20 minutes of training sessions regularly dedicated to we're in front by a goal, we're behind by a goal. We're in front by 3 points, we're in front by 1 point, we're behind by 1 point. They were doing different things for the goal, the under a goal, the 1 point. It was just, I said to you, I remember saying to you, I haven't seen this before. I haven't seen as much of it. Now, it doesn't mean you get it right. It doesn't mean everything's perfect. And I think when you look at behind the goals and really assess it, I think they left too much to a couple of youngsters. I would have loved to have seen a Nick Vlauston or a Trent Cotchin go and take Ryan Mansell's position on the wing that was already 2v1. Like, he's just not equipped yet. He'll get there. He's just not equipped yet to handle that decision-making process at real speed. Got it wrong, put speed on the game for the Bombers. Because they say trade up, you've got to put frontal pressure on. So I would have loved someone to absolve him of that responsibility and take control of the game. And when you look at that number, 0 from 12, maybe they just don't do that. Maybe that's the error. It's not the planning and what we need to do and how we need to cope with it. It's the personnel. And then to leave Stringer, like Broad made a bad blue to go to a pack. Because everyone wants to do the right thing. I'm going to go and be the reason they don't mark this ball, which is admirable, which is the way you want them to think. But when you see it, you go, no, don't leave him. Don't leave him. So, no, Essendon played it perfect. You'd rather almost be the team that's 3 points down than 3 points up. Because you can only get it wrong when you're 3 up. You can only get it right when you're 3 down. Do you know what I mean? If you lose by 9, they go, they tried. They had no other option.
Yes, yeah.
Had no other option. Why wouldn't you try that? Why wouldn't Mason Redmond go and stand the other side of the ground? With Richmond win the clearance, go forward, take the mark, they go, what's Mason Redmond doing all the way over there? As if he was ever going to get that. So you're better off being the team chasing than trying to hang on. But clearly not a one-off. Got some issues they need to address. Having just everything go wrong this year, the Tigers, from the fact that they've changed their model to become a more bona fide clearance contested footy brand, it hasn't quite worked. I don't think you put a line through the whole thing for 2 to 3 years. They could bounce quite quickly. They've had some injuries to key players, like a lot have. But this will just be annus horribilis.
They got that right in the run. I reckon the hardest thing to do is to rapidly change, and I see change in Fremantle. I felt it was there. So we called the Sydney game last week, and for the first quarter across halfback, everything was still backwards and sideways, and then they cured themselves of it. It's clearly something that they'd been talking about and something that they've been training, and then they put it into action. And by the end of that, we spoke last week, they found their game on the Sydney carousel, and they took it back to Perth, and they're a go-forward team, David King.
I've been critical of Fremantle and probably for 18 months. But I've been waiting to see this version, the one where the coaching department trusts the playing unit. And they say, go and play, and if you make mistakes, well, we'll be okay behind the ball. We've got a good back six. We'll be okay. Rather than play slow footy, uncontested mark, and try and protect your back end. Now, that was probably more last year than this year. This year, they disagree with this, right?
Yeah.
So this is the feedback from the club. They say, well, hang on, you say that we are a high handball team, and then you say we're handballing too much, and you say we don't handball enough. But when you talk about Richmond, you talk about their forward handball and their ability to, excite and put speed on the game. So I understand there's some frustration from them with our assessment of how they're playing. I get that. But we can only judge what we see. And at the end of the day, you've got to win. You've got to win contest once the ball's in motion. Okay? So outside of clearance, you've got to win contest. Once you do that, things work because you can continue your possession chain or stop the opposition. So if you just track back for the last few weeks with the Fremantle Dockers. So against the Gold Coast, -12 post-clearance contest position. So that's the general play contest. -23 against the Dogs. They're the ones that smack you. They're the ones that hit you. So the last couple of weeks they've gone +7 and +14. So that allows you to play. That's a big advantage. I think they got the Cats at the right time in terms of talent. Home ground, go and play. Go and excite. Jackson's playing pretty good footy. Sarong's been a consistent high performer for a while. Brayshaw has turned the corner. We know he's injured. Players are injured. Not making excuses for him. I think Darcy's been an absolute star all year. The forward line looks to have functioned now, the last 3 to 4 weeks with these youngsters, better than it has. Now, I saw them at Gather Round. They didn't look anything like this. So there's been significant change. So what level can it get them to is probably the question. Is it this year or is it next? They're still pretty young. So we just wait and see.
They're going to be hard to beat at home from here. Once you get your game in order with what we know is once you're a good team in the West, you become fearsomely hard to beat. I thought the most illuminating moment early was when you go, okay, so what's this look like? It's Darcy versus Segler, and it's Sarong, Brayshaw, Fife and O'Meara versus Blitzer, Bruin, Atkins and Parfitt.
Yeah.
No, that's not going to add up. If you think Geelong are favourites here, that's not going to add up.
Well, it's going to sound silly. They're going to get stiffer opposition than that going forward because that's an undermanned job. It's not who you get, it's when you get them. Hey, terrific. I'd take them like that every day of the week. Tactically, they were brilliant. They didn't bomb the ball into the Cats intercepting defenders. They kicked it just short of the 50 and then went in with punch and low darts. And that allowed their forward line to function. If they weren't coming at speed. If they were coming at speed, hey, run them. They took Tom Stewart out of the game. He had 6 intercepts, so that was very, very clever from a tactical point of view. And at the other end, and this is a template to beating Geelong, the defenders stood on the outside, on boundary side of Hawkins, boundary side of Cameron when they were down there, because that's the way the Cats like to bring the ball in. And it's remarkable how often teams just stay corridor side, back shoulder, because that's the way you've always defended, and they get picked apart. They only took 11 marks inside 50, the Cats. That's their lowest for the year.
Yep.
So Pearce was terrific. Cox did his thing. Ryan was great. So they weren't great in terms of – Ryan wasn't as great as Pearce, but just the method, the mechanics of the way that they defended rendered that Geelong forward line useless.
So Geelong are 5-5. They're 7th. They've lost touch with Collingwood and Brisbane. So they won't catch them now. They're 4 games behind Collingwood and 3 games behind Brisbane. So the top 2 is out of the equation. They're in a scramble now to try to grab third or fourth, or maybe they're in a scramble to hold their place.
I think what they'd be doing is hoping that the Pies finish top two. At least it's impossible to win travelling for a Brisbane prelim or a Port Adelaide prelim at Adelaide Oval. I think it's incredibly difficult. So they'd be hoping to finish fifth, sixth, and then setting for a 6-week campaign. I think in the back half of the year and trying to maybe do what the Dogs did in 6. And this is let's be honest, the percentages of that are low.
Yes.
So if you're talking where are they at today, then you'd say that their percentages halved from the weekend, didn't they? You'd like
no, they did.
Yeah,
they did. So my view was all along was if they could get to 4-4, 5-5, but they are profoundly unhealthy at 5-5. So I think the way I'd forecast it was they would be healthy by now, like last year, and then build their season from here. But they're at the worst of their health now, and it's not coming back in the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, I agree. Their chances of winning it diminish significantly as a result of it.
Yeah, they lose a few little luxuries. So they lose the luxury of resting some players because you're chasing wins now. It's a bad space to be in, as opposed to those at the top of the tree who will be able to rest some players, whether it's in game or just give them weeks off and hit the finals healthy and full of juice. You're chasing, so it's a big difference.
Are there open questions about Melbourne?
I think there are. I think there are, and if you look at their numbers, they're distorted by a couple of beltings. I'm still big on the way they play is brutal, but it's going to be a long year playing that way. We talked about this through the preseason. I think they had to stack their wins early, which they did. They get to a point in the year, okay, they've lost Oliver for a few weeks. I think that'll serve them well. They've got to find some other players to go through there and experiment a bit more. I was seriously disappointed with the lack of support from Max Gawn on the weekend, and that goes back to who you are, not how you play or the mechanics of who you are, the absolute soul of who you are. This guy has been a father figure type leader for this whole group.
Yep.
Throwing him on a bus, taking him for a drink, put him on the bus, take him home. That's what he's done.
Yeah.
And he's cuddled them all. He's challenged them all. He was challenged like no other on the weekend by a group of 23 coming at Max. At every opportunity, tried to run, got a check. They knew it was going on. I went and watched the tape. First half, 14 times they bumped him. Not a massive deal, right? But it's not even that. It's the fact that they are going after one of ours. They're going after our captain. We have to support, because if it was us, he'd support us. Not one of them. Not Oliver, not Petrarca, not Brayshaw, not Stephen May. No good. No good. That's not how you build this this impenetrable culture. Like you've got to defend. I know he's a big guy and he can handle himself and all that sort of stuff, but Port have done this before. They knew it was coming. Or
when they saw it, they should have recognised it.
When Ollie Lord dropped the elbow in the middle of his back, they had to come from everywhere. And you know what? When these things happen, it doesn't matter if you give away a free kick. It doesn't even matter if you give away a goal. Because in the long run, they're the things that build success. That we've got each other's back and we're not going to let these blokes, a bloke that's played half a dozen games, give it to one of our men. We're not going to let that happen. If it was Oliver on the deck, I guarantee you Max Gawn's over there in a heartbeat throwing someone down to the ground and probably giving away a free kick, and we'd all say, oh, that's undisciplined. No, it's not. It just sends a little statement that you're not coming at our men unopposed. So I was seriously disappointed with that. And that's going to take a little while to build back up, I think.
PFI over Port Adelaide. Aaron had texted through a bit earlier on Snap Judgment. Port Adelaide, best young midfield in the league. I've got the best job vacancy in footy.
Have you?
Yep.
What's that?
Come and be the ruckman to Butters, Rosie and Horne-Francis for the next 10 years. That is an open position. Is my manager...
10. Have they got 10?
Yeah. These boys are only...
Oh, no.
Those three boys in the middle...
No. Sorry, worded that poorly. The rest, this group as
No, that's not the job application. The job application is they need a ruckman to feed these three boys. Oh, give me that job if I'm over 6'8" and got any scrap of ability whatsoever. That's a pretty good scenario.
Can I give you another scenario? Go and get Nick Nat. Spend a second-round pick next year. Just get him. Third-round pick, you might even get him for. And then have 12 months while you've still got Dixon and still got Boak and this Jonas and the guys down back. Go and get a guy that's a difference maker that could set these boom youngsters on their path. Zach Butters is the best player in the competition the last 6 weeks. The best player, averaging over 20 ratings points. They got 2 of the top 5. Rosie's 2 of the top 5 mids.
Yep.
Rosie's the 5th rated midfield in the competition. A bee's whisker behind Bontempelli and Newcomb and Petrarca. So they're elite. They're elite talent. Houston's having a sneaky good year. His last 6 weeks, he's top 20 in the comp. So they're in serious form, but it's about winning flags. Everyone's talking about re-signing Ken Hinkley. Where do you sit?
No, they committed themselves to running the course. Just run the course. They're now through the risk of that discussion undermining their season. That they are free to become whatever they're going to become, and he is coaching them brilliantly. And the fact that he's down there suits Camperdown Ken. You have a look at the way he interacts with his players. That's it. That's the very essence of who he is. And it unlocked itself at the toughest moment. He spoke to us on Crunch Time as they are playing for him. And that's a very real and powerful dynamic right now.
Yeah, true. And I think it's when you set these really high bars, Gerard, that you got to make a prelim or you got to make a granny. You can't touch it at round 10 or 12 or 15. You've almost got to run right to the end of its tether.
Yeah. When you sit the exam and get an A+, just sit the exam. He's sitting the exam and he's acing it at the moment. James has unlocked the secret to the means test. I want to share this with you. This segment was a lot more enjoyable when we're winning. James doesn't say who he barracks for, but I reckon that goes for about everybody. What are you going to do at 4?
At 4, I'm going to put the Dogs. I really like what I saw on the weekend. You know, I think this midfield now understand role rather than just the shared responsibility of spinning magnets through. I like the fact there's more Bontempelli, more Libba, and Bailey Smith going in there.
He's found his place, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been terrific. So I'm excited about the Dogs and Liam Jones. My God, 17 clubs overlook Liam Jones, or 16 clubs overlook Liam Jones, and I think that's going to prove to be a big error.
I put Port into the seedings last week and I'm sliding them up. I'm having Melbourne at 4 because I just think there are 3 teams performing better than them. 3?
Well, stay shocked. I've got Port Adelaide at 3. Yeah, I think that when you see what the midfield's doing, and they had quite a few components out of their forward 50 on the weekend and were still able to get over the top and play really honest footy. They're on a run. They're playing some solid footy. So you've got to reward that at some stage, and congrats.
I've got Port Adelaide at 3, sliding up. 2?
Brisbane.
Yep, same.
Yeah, got Brisbane. You can't have a bad 5 minutes. You lower your gloves against Brisbane and you wear 3 on the beak.
Yep.
So you just can't have a poor 5 minutes against them. Their offense is out of control. I think they're averaging 112 points a game the last 6 weeks, which is just ridiculous numbers.
They were challenged by Gold Coast, and then they didn't give up a single inside 50 while pouring the goals on to win the game. It's a really great 10 minutes to go back and watch. I've had the Lions at 2 for a few weeks, so I'm really happy with that. And 1, we are Collingwood, which means you've dropped Melbourne out of your seedings.
Hey, I didn't like what I saw, Gerard. There's no iron team.
It's a big move on the seedings.